Chapter 10. Check the tire pressure. It all started with the LA Weekly. It came out on Wednesday night around 6 p.m., but the time wasn't always exact. Superguy had a loop of 3 newsstands he'd check until one of them had it. He'd snatch it up and race home, giddy, to tear it open and see what was inside. He'd rush into his room, spread it out on the floor, and pore over the listings. The listings were magic. Disco night at the Crush Bar on Cahuenga. Ladies drink free at the Garage in Silver Lake. No cover at Club Lingerie. Beach night at the Tropicana. Superguy could barely contain himself. He felt like an engine revving and revving and revving. He'd circle the ones he wanted to hit. He could barely wait. Friday, he'd be in a great mood at work, laughing with folks, pinning boards, filing artwork, distributing minutes. The possibility of the weekend was like an endless horizon as big as the whole West Coast. But things would start to unravel as soon as he got back to the Brick, because unexplainably, the house had become home base for all kinds of losers. LA was supposed to be filled with actors, writers, models, artists, cinematographers, but this, oh boy. First, there were the weird Marge people. Marge worked as a delivery driver for a linen company, and in spite of the fact that Marge barely ever talked above a guttural whisper, he somehow connected with everyone on his delivery routes. Guys from the hotels downtown, guys from the catering departments at the studios, guys in cheesy shirts, guys with nothing interesting to say. They collected around Marge like inert house flies. There were the California Pizza Kitchen people, Paul and his ratty entourage, all stoned all the time and all with aspirations to be in the movie industry. They would postulate on it endlessly, but had no prospects, no training, no anything. It was just something they said, which drove Superguy crazy because they were so obviously going nowhere. He wanted the real thing, not these scrubs. Oh, you're working on a screenplay. How many pages have you written? Oh, none? Well, then you're not working on a screenplay. You're just thinking about a screenplay, which is not even close to the same thing. There were the industry people, but not the ones in front of the camera, no. These were the tech people who wore belt knives and white Reeboks and talked jargon nonstop. There were the Chinese guys from Superguy's work. A few months ago, one of them had invited him to lunch, and he'd said yes, and suddenly he was in with the Chinese guys. They'd all go to lunch together and not say much, and soon they were coming over to the house where they'd sit around and not say much. The only woman who ever showed up came from a blind date Charles had gone on. They'd all cheered him on as he headed out, hoping he'd get lucky, but he returned to report that nothing had happened. The girl was sad and wasn't ready to date at all. They had spent the night just talking, with Charles in customer service mode. After that, sad girl would show up occasionally to meet Charles, and eventually she started coming inside where she'd sit on the couch and not talk to anyone. But the worst of them all was the D&D people, with their ponytails and their tinted glasses, with their too small t-shirts and their arm acne, with their nose laughs and their banter, and somehow all of these people gravitated to the Brick. They played video games, hunched around the TV like a Greek chorus. They gathered to go out for movie premieres. They draped across the kitchen and across the couches and the floor. They dropped by. They ordered pizza. They hit the Del Taco across the street for Taco Tuesdays, making god-awful chomping noises as they gobbled down the mushy food and then gassed up the place with their sulfur. They laughed and grunted and played music, and getting them moving was impossible. Sticky house is what Superguy called it, and it was brutal. He'd get home, ready to get going, ready to start the engines, ready to rage, and had to wait for someone to show up. Had to finish this game, had to finish this beer, had to just sit there jawing like the whole of Los Angeles wasn't out there jumping and grinding already. Who was driving? Who could drive? What was the address? We need to stop and get something. What are we eating? Oh, wait, I just ordered food. Endless, soul-sucking, momentum-draining. But once they were on their way, zing, momentum restored instantly. All of that possibility, all of that potential, all of that, oh boy, came rushing back. There would be music blasting and road sodas sipped. They'd rip onto the highway, open her up and roar. West Olive to Cahuenga. Girls in the car on the left. Cross Franklin to La Brea. Turn up this song. Hollywood Boulevard to Fairfax. Is this it? Where can we park? Is that the place? Quick, pull over. I need to check the tire pressure. They'd pull into a parking lot or behind an apartment complex, and Superguy would bolt out of the car, rush to the back tire, kneel down, and pee for 4 straight minutes. Then, fresh as daisies, they'd head to the club. For Superguy, this was always a moment of hope. This one would be awesome. This one would be the doorway to a night of madness and stories and raging. They'd been bounced before. They learned that lesson. They got to a club, waited in line 40 minutes, and then just as when they were waved in, the bouncer stopped them because Brett wasn't wearing a collared shirt. They'd been tricked before. The listing in the LA Weekly said no cover charge, but didn't mention that ended at 7 p.m., and now there was a $25 cover, and they hadn't brought enough cash. But a new pattern was emerging. They would wait in line and finally get to the door. A dark hallway, no visibility inside. They'd pay through the hallway, cover charge committed, and the place was lame. Empty dance floor, sparse clusters of just a few people, awful music pumping so loud, no seats. They'd stand as a clump. They would walk to the edge of the empty blank space with flashing lights and no life whatsoever. And then the inevitable. There was one way out and one way only. Only one way to enjoy standing around in a huddle in a dark black room. Only one way to actually try and approach the sparkling girls. Only one way to dare step out on the dance floor in a world where men were relegated to the perimeter. Your only choice was to get wasted, which meant the money went instantly. It was Friday night and Superguy was ready to roll. This place has free cigars. How cool is that? He was practically shouting as he paced back and forth in the living room. Brett and Marge were on the couch playing Blades of Steel and not paying him much attention. We're turning that off the second Charles gets home. Brett and Marge vaguely nodded, hypnotized by the game. Superguy looked them over, making sure they had on collared shirts. Marge had a light blue Oxford blobbed over his thick body, the same way Marge seemed to blob over the couch. Brett had a dress shirt with shiny buttons. His surfer do was combed back. Wait a minute, Superguy said as he looked down at his own shirt. It was blue with white stripes. Wait, we're all wearing blue shirts. We can't do that. We'll look ridiculous. We could go to the broom, Marge muttered in his monotone mumble. The broom? Superguy responded. The blue room. What? What are you talking about? Now Marge was laughing, which made him even harder to understand. The Blue Room. It's a bar a few blocks away, just down San Fernando. What are you... But then it clicked. Superguy had driven past it 100 times, but he had barely even noticed it. It was a total dive bar, a nothing bar. They were headed to Hollywood, not some hole in the wall in Burbank. We're just waiting for Charles, Brett crowed. Let's do it! Plus, if we start drinking and forces him to drive, Marge mumbled with a deep giggle. Fine, Superguy submitted. At least it would get them out of the house. They left Charles a note to come pick them up, and then 3 boys in blue strolled down the sidewalk in the warm LA dusk. The place looked like an abandoned building from the outside. The only thing that would let you know it was a bar or even an anything was a small neon sign. Superguy expected the worst as he stepped inside, and still it managed to fall short of his expectations. It was a long, narrow room with a steel countertop bar and ugly vinyl stools. The walls had a mess of tile mosaics, old-timey paintings, and dated, dingy wallpaper. The music was too loud, but a speaker was broken, so you could only hear half the sound. The rest was static crackles. And the place literally smelled like mothballs. Stale beer as well, but mostly mothballs. Not a single person was there except the bartender, who was an old man with a bandaged nose. Brett bounded up to the bar. Like our shirts? He asked with a sly smile. Ah, yeah, the old man laughed. Free round, right? The bartender kept laughing and set 3 frosty glasses of Miller Genuine Draft on the steel bar. They went and sat at a poofy, uncomfortable booth and finished their beers without talking much. Marge got another round. Brett went to the bathroom and came back excited. There's actually a back patio outside. Want to check that out? The tables outside were rusted patio furniture crammed into a narrow alley, but it was cool outside and the air smelled flowery from a giant bottle brush in the corner of the porch. Superguy went back in and got the next round, and the bartender gave him 3 shots on the house to go with the beers. Things got confusing from there. Charles showed up, and they immediately sent him away to change into a blue shirt. In the meantime, they ordered him 3 beers so he could catch up. It was unclear who actually drank those. Marge asked the bartender if he could use the phone behind the bar and called a couple of friends to tell them to come and was sure to demand they wear blue. It was starting to get busy, so Marge stayed behind the bar a while and helped the old man serve drinks. Charles returned, and they immediately sent him to go get food. He returned with sacks of Del Taco and 4 guys from the D&D club, one of whom was wearing a chainmail shirt with a blue tunic. Superguy kept looking at his watch in frustration. Marge's friends started to arrive. Brett made some calls and worked a stint behind the bar. Charles tried on the chainmail, and they all took turns throwing rocks at him in the parking lot. A group of the industry tech guys showed up, and one of them fixed the broken speaker. Superguy kept stalking back and forth from outside to outside again, going from the smoke and the closeness inside the bar and then out to the open air and the tables outside. Every time he looked, someone else was behind the bar on the phone. More and more people kept showing up. And on what felt like his 5th trip outside, he found a group of girls who worked at Paramount circled around one of the small tables, smoking cigars. Superguy about died when they offered him one.